India's planned coal mining expansion now leads the world, directly shaping how much fossil fuel will be available for power generation in coming years. This is Omni View, episode 142. A Reuters report states that India accounts for the largest share of new coal mining projects under development worldwide. The finding comes from an analysis of global mining plans and highlights India's continued investment in coal infrastructure. No specific project approvals or production start dates are detailed in the report. The analysis examined announced capacity additions across multiple countries and identified India as the single largest contributor to the total pipeline. Reuters published the summary on August 13, 2026, drawing directly from the underlying dataset without adding external projections. Reuters frames the development through the lens of energy supply planning, noting India's position as a major emerging economy with rising electricity demand. International climate-focused organizations view the same expansion as extending reliance on a high-emission fuel at a time when many governments are seeking to limit new fossil infrastructure. Indian policy documents emphasize domestic energy security and the need to meet industrial growth targets that current renewable capacity has not yet fully replaced. The report itself contains most statements from Indian government officials or from climate advocacy groups, leaving those interpretations to be supplied by other sources. Observers tracking global energy transitions will watch whether the planned capacity moves from announcement to construction in the coming years. Shifting now to a development in the Middle East. Iranian state media outlet Fars reported that Iran now considers the Strait of Hormuz under its control. The strait is the narrow waterway through which a large share of global oil shipments pass. Reuters relayed the statement without additional confirmation from other governments. The claim was issued on August 13, 2026, and focused on waters adjacent to Iranian territory. No immediate changes to shipping patterns were reported in the initial coverage. Reuters presents the claim as a development in regional maritime assertions, while Fars frames it as an assertion of sovereign rights over waters near Iranian territory. Neighboring Gulf states and major oil importers treat the strait as an international passage whose security affects energy prices worldwide. Shipping data show the route remains open to commercial traffic at present. The statement did not include details on enforcement measures or on coordination with other littoral states. Observers will monitor whether the assertion leads to any operational adjustments by naval or commercial vessels. Next, a report on manufacturing patterns in China. The Economist reports that Chinese electric vehicle plants continue to increase output aimed at foreign markets. At the same time, Chinese households remain cautious about spending after the pandemic and property sector difficulties. Export volumes have risen even as domestic sales growth has slowed. The pattern reflects manufacturing capacity that was expanded during earlier policy support periods. The article notes that factories are directing production abroad while local consumers limit purchases. The Economist links the export push to manufacturing capacity built during earlier policy support for the sector. Chinese industrial planners see overseas sales as a way to maintain factory utilization. Overseas competitors and trade officials in importing countries point to the resulting price pressure on their own vehicle makers. The report does not provide exact export volume figures or name specific destination markets. Readers can track future trade data releases to see whether the gap between factory output and domestic demand narrows. Meanwhile, severe weather has struck parts of the United States. The Associated Press reports that severe storms moved across the Midwest, producing tornadoes, heavy rain, and flash flooding. Damage assessments are still being compiled by local authorities. No nationwide disruption to supply chains has been reported so far. The storms affected multiple states in a single overnight period. Initial reports focused on immediate weather impacts rather than long-term economic effects. The Associated Press focuses on immediate local impacts to communities and infrastructure. Emergency management agencies in affected states are coordinating response resources. Insurance industry data from past similar events show that repeated flooding can raise long-term rebuilding costs for homeowners and local governments. The coverage does not include casualty figures or specific county-level damage totals. State and federal agencies will release updated assessments in the days ahead. Turning to corporate results, Reuters reports that Treasury Wine Estates posted an annual loss after its Americas business declined. The company's share price moved sharply on the day of the announcement. No forward guidance on recovery timelines was included in the initial release. The result reflected a 42% drop in annual profit compared with the prior year. The announcement was made on August 12, 2026. Reuters ties the result to softer demand in the United States market. Company statements highlight ongoing efforts to adjust distribution and pricing. Investors are watching whether similar patterns appear in other wine producers with large North American exposure. The report contains no breakdown of sales by individual brand or by state within the Americas region. Market participants will examine subsequent quarterly updates for signs of stabilization. In technology analysis, The Economist examined 11 major technology shifts in the United States over 150 years to place current AI companies in historical context. The analysis covers railways, electricity, automobiles, and the internet, among other periods. It does not forecast specific market outcomes. The study draws on revenue and employment records from each earlier wave. Publication occurred on August 13, 2026. The Economist uses long-run revenue and employment data from earlier waves to illustrate how new technologies can concentrate economic power before competitive pressures widen participation. Historians of technology note that regulatory responses often arrived after the initial concentration phase. Current antitrust authorities are reviewing similar patterns in digital markets. The article does not name individual AI firms or assign relative rankings among them. Future regulatory filings may provide additional data points for comparison. Now, some progress worth knowing about. Official figures released by the Office for National Statistics show the UK economy expanded 0.4% in the quarter ending June. The growth figure incorporates data from services, production, and construction sectors. The Bank of England and Treasury have not yet issued updated forecasts based on the new number. The release was published on August 13, 2026, and covers the 3 months to June. No sector-level breakdown beyond the headline total was provided in the initial summary. The Office for National Statistics presents the data as a snapshot of recent output without assigning causes. Business organizations note that sustained quarterly growth above zero supports employment levels. Fiscal watchdogs will examine whether the pace is sufficient to meet existing public spending commitments. The figure follows a period of modest expansion and precedes the next set of monthly indicators. Analysts will compare the outturn with earlier quarterly releases to assess consistency. Now, to really understand this story, there's something most coverage leaves out. Most coverage of export surges treats them as simple signs of industrial strength. Yet the underlying mechanism is that factories built for one market can keep running by selling into others when home demand weakens. In China's case, earlier policy support expanded electric vehicle plants faster than household incomes recovered after the property slowdown, so output is now directed abroad. The same pattern appeared in earlier industrializers when domestic consumption lagged behind capacity additions. Knowing this, when reports cite rising export volumes, it is useful to check whether those volumes reflect new demand abroad or simply unused capacity at home. One concrete check is to compare official export statistics with domestic retail sales or household income data released in the same quarter. Another step is to examine whether government subsidies or financing programs originally aimed at the domestic market are still active. Historical records from the 1970s and 1980s show that several Asian economies followed similar routes before their internal markets caught up. Trade data agencies publish both export and import figures monthly, allowing direct comparison without relying on secondary commentary. Readers can also review corporate earnings calls for mentions of capacity utilization rates inside the exporting country. This approach reveals whether growth is balanced or one-sided. If you want to go deeper on India's coal mining plans, compare how Reuters and The Economist are covering energy and manufacturing shifts. Tomorrow, watch for updates on whether the Iranian assertion leads to any operational adjustments by naval or commercial vessels. That wraps up today's Omni View. Remember, the best-informed people read more than one perspective, and the calmest ones know that most days, somewhere, something is quietly getting better. For full source links, check out today's written briefing on the Omni View summaries page. Share this with someone who values fair coverage. See you tomorrow, and if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. Quick tip from the network: try modern investing techniques next. Modern strategies for Canadian and US investors. Every NARA Network show is free at naranetwork.com. Following the long arcs? Story trackers on naranetwork.com follow major programs across episodes: Tesla, SpaceX, AI, space science, and more. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.